Hello and a very good morning. You're watching the breakfast news on Rajya Sabha television with me, Frank Pereira. Here are this morning's headlines. Terrorists attack army camp in Kupwara. No casualties reported so far. Pakistan continues to violate ceasefire. 4 violations on Wednesday. India hits back after Nawaz Sharif's statement denying Pakistani involvement in the Uri attack, says Pakistan has established itself as a global epicenter of terrorism. India strongly criticizes UN Security Council for being indecisive and unresponsive after China extends technical hold in its bid for UN ban against Jaish chief Masood Azhar. GSAT 18, the latest communication satellite from India, successfully launched from spaceport in French Guiana. And UN climate body says landmark Paris deal will enter into force in 30 days after 72 countries ratify the deal. US President hails it as historic day in fight against climate change. Well, let's begin with our top focus on the bulletin this morning, where militants attacked an army camp in North Kashmir's Kupwara district, prompting security forces to retaliate. At around 5 a.m., militants opened fire on an army camp at Langate in Kupwara district. There was a standoff firing for about 15 to 20 minutes. No casualties were reported in the exchange of fire. Additional forces have been rushed to the area. Meanwhile, Pakistan violated border ceasefire 4 times on Wednesday and resorted to heavy shelling and firing on the Indian posts and civilian areas in Poonch, Rajouri and Kupwara districts of Jammu and Kashmir. A senior army officer said ceasefire violations have also taken place in Mendar sector of Poonch and Machil sector of Kupwara. There have been 8 ceasefire violations since Tuesday along the line of control. Pakistan troops shelled mortar bombs and fired from automatic and small weapons. Indian Army appropriately responded and there were no casualties on this side. In the wake of the increasing violations, BSF has increased deployment of its troops along the international border and technical equipment has been reinforced.
पिछले 2 दिनों से यहाँ पे हैवी शेलिंग चल रही है और लोगों की ज़िंदगी जो है वो मुश्किल में है, लोगों की जान पे बन आई है। कुछ लोग माइग्रेट होने की कगार पे हैं और जो हैं वो भी छुप के जो है वो अपनी ज़िंदगी गुजर बसर कर रहे हैं।
खाने पीने का प्रबंध जहाँ से होता था वो किसी तरह नुकसान हो रहा था। मुझे बहुत घबराहट हो रही है। मेरे बच्चे 10वीं 12वीं पढ़ते हैं, इसमें पढ़ाई नहीं चल रही। हम जहाँ तो हमारे कहाँ जाएंगे।
यहाँ पे प्रॉब्लम है पानी की, खाने पीने की, बच्चों का दूध नहीं मिल रहा है यहाँ पे। वहाँ पे हमारे जो पशु हैं उन वो वहाँ पे ही है ना, हम यहाँ पे ला नहीं सकते। हमने रिश्तेदार के घर में चारा नहीं मिलता, तो गवर्नमेंट ने कोई हमारे बारे में नहीं सोचा है।
Meanwhile, the Pakistan army is believed to have mobilized about 100 terrorists across the line of control to push them into India to carry out attacks in Jammu and Kashmir. This assessment has been conveyed by the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval during a meeting of the CCS headed by the Prime Minister on Wednesday. Quoting intelligence agencies, the NSA is said to have told the members of the CCS that about a dozen terror launch pads were activated by the Pakistan army to push the terrorists into Jammu and Kashmir to avenge the surgical strikes. The Pakistan army is believed to be planning attacks by terrorists on Indian defense personnel and security establishments besides select civilian targets. Doval is said to have conveyed to the CCS that there is a possibility of more terrorists trying to sneak into Jammu and Kashmir before the onset of the winter. Meanwhile, India has also shored up its defences and regular sorties by Sukhoi fighter jets are taking place from Srinagar airport, which is generally a MiG base. India has strongly criticized an unresponsive UN Security Council for being indecisive on sanctioning leaders of organizations it itself designates as terrorist entities. This comes after China extended its technical hold on India's bid for a UN ban against JEM chief Masood Azhar. India's permanent representative to the UN, Ambassador Syed Akbaruddin, told the UN General Assembly it has, in a variety of ways, become unresponsive to the needs of our time and ineffective to meeting the challenges it is confronted with. Without naming China, Akbaruddin referred to its technical hold on India's bid against Jaish-e-Mohammed chief Azhar, saying that the Council is a body that ponders for 6 months on whether to sanction leaders of organizations it has itself designated as terrorist entities. On March 31st this year, China, a veto-wielding permanent member of the Security Council, had blocked India's move to put a ban on Azhar under the Al-Qaeda Sanctions Committee of the Council. The Chinese technical hold had lapsed on Monday, and had China not raised further objection, the resolution designating Azhar as a terrorist would have been passed automatically. Well, the Cabinet Committee on Security met on Wednesday to discuss the security scenario in the wake of the surgical strikes. The situation remains tense along the India-Pakistan border since the Uri attack in Jammu and Kashmir, in which 19 soldiers were killed. Meanwhile, India has once again condemned Pakistan at the United Nations for misusing international platforms to raise the Kashmir issue.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi reviewed the security situation along the line of control and the international border in the Cabinet Committee on Security meet on Wednesday. In the second CCS meet since the surgical strikes, Prime Minister advised the ministers to avoid chest thumping on the issue. Home Minister Rajnath briefed the Prime Minister on the situation along the border and in Jammu and Kashmir. Defence Minister Manohar Parrikar, External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj and the chiefs of the three forces were also present in the meeting. Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti met Prime Minister Modi in Delhi and urged him to de-escalate tension along the India-Pakistan border and reach out to the people of the state with the tangible confidence-building measures to address their political, economic and developmental concerns. Meanwhile, India has once again hit out at Pakistan, saying Jammu and Kashmir is and will continue to be an integral part of the country. Lashing out at Pakistan, India's permanent representative to the United Nations, Syed Akbaruddin, said that Pakistan has established itself as a global epicenter of terrorism and has absolutely no support in the world for claims on Kashmir.
Our response to Pakistan is consistent. Abandon your futile quest. The state of Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India and will remain so. No amount of misuse of international platforms by Pakistan will change that reality. The sell-by date of Pakistan's anachronistic approach is long over.
However, Pakistan once again hailed slain Hizbul militant Burhan Wani as a martyr and blamed India for trying to evade a peaceful resolution on the Kashmir issue. Addressing a joint session of Pakistani Parliament, Nawaz Sharif accused India of creating a war-like environment by blaming Pakistan for the Uri terror attack last month.
हम कश्मीर समेत तमाम मसाइल संजीदा बामकसद और नतीजा खेज मुज़ाकरात के ज़रिए हल करना चाहते हैं। हम इस सोची समझी राह पर साबित कदमी से चलते रहेंगे, लेकिन अमन की इस ख्वाहिश को एक पुरवकार, बाइज्जत और खुददार कौम की ख्वाहिश समझा जाए।
Amidst heightened security due to tension between India and Pakistan, BSF on Wednesday took into custody 9 Pakistani fishermen after their boat entered Sir Creek area in Gujarat. This is the third time in a week that Indian authorities have impounded Pakistani boats which cross the international water boundary. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, moving on now, Sri Lankan Prime Minister Ranil Wickremsinghe, who is on a 3-day visit to India, met Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Wednesday. The two leaders spoke about several issues, and also the Sri Lankan Prime Minister spoke about terrorism and said that he was happy with the surgical strikes that were carried out by India in Pakistan.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi held bilateral talks with his Sri Lankan counterpart Ranil Wickremsinghe on Wednesday. While the closed-door talks touched on a number of issues of mutual and regional concern, the focus remained on cross-border terrorism. The Lankan Prime Minister said all SAARC nations must come together to end this menace.
What I've discussed with your government has been, how does SAARC evolve from here? What do we do there? then how do we ensure, as I commended the Prime Minister and the government for the restraint is shown in handling the issue. Then let us see what else we can do. That's I would say, let us look at getting things back so that there will be no cross-border terrorism in India or any other country. I know it compliments Prime Minister Modi for the approach that he has taken.
Speaking to the media post the meeting, the Lankan Prime Minister asserted that the alliance between India and Sri Lanka is more robust than between any other country in the region.
There are a lot of interesting projects we are doing with India. I came and discussed it. We are developing part of the highway system. We are looking at cooperation in some of the security fields. We are with the Singaporean Subhana Jorong is developing Trincomalee, so India is also coming into it. Our relationship with China is an economic relationship. It's not a military one, and it's a part of the. By the time we took power, the Chinese had already given the loans for the building of the Hambantota harbour and the airport.
Earlier in the day, Ranil Wickremsingh also met External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj and Home Minister Rajnath Singh. He also called on Congress President Sonia Gandhi and former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh.
Sri Lankan Prime Minister has clearly said that the future of South Asia is closely related to India's prosperity, and so cross-border terrorism must be in the agenda of SAARC. Akhilesh Suman for Rajya Sabha Television with camera person Shiv Kumar in Delhi.
Well, the Sri Lankan Prime Minister's support to India comes close on the heels of Singapore's Prime Minister supporting India on terrorism as well. Now, Hsien, the Prime Minister of Singapore, is in India on a 5-day visit and had agreed to strengthen cooperation in countering terrorism. He called on President Pranab Mukherjee on Wednesday at the Rashtrapati Bhavan, where the two held talks on wide-ranging issues. A delegation of ministers and members of parliament accompanying the Singaporean Prime Minister were also present. On Tuesday, Lee had held summit-level talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, during which the two countries signed 3 agreements. On Thursday, Prime Minister Lee will attend the launch of the Centre of Excellence for Tourism Training in Udaipur. The centre has been built as part of a skill development collaboration under the India-Singapore Strategic Partnership signed in November 2015. Well, let's take a look now at the news and events lined up for the day in our segment The Day Ahead. Congress Vice President Rahul Gandhi's month-long Kisan Yatra will conclude today at Sansad Marg in New Delhi. After entering Delhi, Rahul Gandhi will visit Rajghat. Before reaching Delhi, he will begin his roadshow at Meerut. He will kickstart this Meerut roadshow by garlanding the statue of B.R. Ambedkar and will also address his party workers. A Delhi court will decide today on whether to summon Union Minister Smriti Irani on a complaint filed against her for allegedly giving false information regarding her academic qualifications in affidavits to the Election Commission. The complainant had alleged that Irani had deliberately given disrespect information about her educational qualifications in affidavits filed before the poll panel in 2004. 2011 and 2014 and not given any clarification despite concerns being raised on the issue. The Supreme Court will hear the BCCI's response to the Lodha Committee's status report today. The Apex Court will decide the future of cricket administration in India. The committee had recommended that the board's top officials be superseded and replaced by a panel of administrators, as the BCCI had failed to implement recommendations by the September 30th deadline. Well, India's latest communication satellite GSAT 18 was successfully launched by a heavy-duty rocket of Arianespace from the spaceport of Kourou in French Guyana this morning. GSAT 18 will provide telecommunication services for the country by strengthening ISRO's current fleet of 14 operational telecommunication satellites. The launch was originally scheduled for Wednesday but deferred by 24 hours owing to unfavorable weather conditions. With the weather being clear today, the European launcher Ariane 5 VA231 blasted off at around 2 a.m. GSAT 18 is the 20th satellite launched by the European Space Agency. ISRO Chairman A.S. Kiran Kumar watched the launch from the Mission Control Center and left shortly after liftoff. His message was read out later by one of his senior colleagues.
I am really delighted this evening having witnessed another glorious and flawless liftoff of Ariane VA-231 flight that carried India's GSAT 18 satellite along with its co-passenger Skymaster 2 successfully. Like on all previous occasions, Ariane Space has provided us yet again a magnificent textbook launch. I congratulate and compliment Mr. Stephen Israel and his team for this. I would also like to congratulate NBN team for the successful launch of Skymaster's 2 satellite, which is to provide critical broadband services in Australia in coming days.
Well, it's time for a short break now, but news and updates will continue on the other side. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
The sacred relics of Buddha were unearthed in Piprava in Uttar Pradesh. Buddhist monks from all over the world visit the National Museum to pay their respects. These charred bone fragments of Buddha are housed in the gold canopy gifted by the royal family of Thailand.
Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha television. Let's get you the latest on the Kaveri water dispute now. The AIADMK has hit out at the centre and Karnataka government for not abiding by the Supreme Court directive to set up the Kaveri Management Board. Protests were held in several parts of Tamil Nadu against the centre for its stance on the apex court regarding the setting up of Kaveri Management Board, with the farmers' body launching an indefinite fast on the issue in Chennai. The AIADMK has alleged that Tamil Nadu is being given a stepmotherly treatment. The party also said that people were aware that the convergence of stance of the central and Karnataka governments on the issue of setting up the CMB was aimed at Karnataka Assembly electoral harvest. DMK treasurer and leader of the opposition M.K. Stalin said that they would stage a fast on October 7th in Tanjavur to condemn the centre's stand on setting up of CMB. The supervisory committee led by the Central Water Commission chairman will visit the Kaveri Basin area from October 7 to October 15 to assess the ground realities as directed by the Supreme Court. And meanwhile, a day after the Supreme Court asked the Delhi government to stop the blame game over the outbreak of vector-borne diseases in the national capital, Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal and his cabinet colleague Satyendra Jain met the Lieutenant Governor on Wednesday and agreed to fight chikungunya and dengue together. In the meeting, Health Minister Jain explained the government's stance on to the Lieutenant Governor who directed departments concerned to intensify fight against vector-borne diseases, especially in the wake of the recent rains. He directed the Delhi Health Secretary to hold weekly review meetings. The LG's office in a statement said that the MCD commissioners informed that they have been drawn a roster for field visits by DCs, which is being followed strictly. Till October 1st, 2,133 dengue and 5,293 chikungunya cases have been reported in Delhi. In the national capital, dengue has claimed 21 lives, while chikungunya has claimed 15 lives. On Monday, the apex court had warned the Delhi government against any blame game over the issue, directing Kejriwal and Jain to meet with the LG to chalk out a strategy to curb vector-borne diseases.
चिकनगुनिया और डेंगू के बारे में रिव्यू किया गया है। बहुत ही सारे डिपार्टमेंट्स को बुलाया गया था, एमसीडी को, डीडीए को और दिल्ली सरकार के, तो सभी डिपार्टमेंट से रिव्यू लिया गया है और ठीक से रिव्यू किया है और सभी लोग डिपार्टमेंट मिलकर काम करेंगे इसको बचने में।
Well, in other news now, outlining the goals in ending extreme poverty by 2030, World Bank President Jim Yong Kim highlighted some of the huge challenges for developing countries like India. Ironically, these stem from the use of technology and automation, which he says can fundamentally disrupt the pattern of traditional economic path. He said this on the eve of the annual meetings of the World Bank and the IMF.
At a time when the world economy is grappling with an era of low growth, the World Bank president has a cautionary take on the effects of technology and automation on jobs and incomes in countries like India and China.
Research based on World Bank data has predicted that the proportion of jobs threatened in India by automation is 69%, in China 77%, and in Ethiopia the percentage of jobs threatened by automation is 85%.
World Bank President Jim Yong Kim feels that the facts call for a deep review of the methodologies that are needed to fight poverty in developing countries.
Now, as we continue to encourage more investment in infrastructure to promote growth, we also have to think about the kinds of infrastructure that countries will need in the economy of the future. Now, we all know that technology has and will continue to fundamentally reshape the world. But the traditional economic path from increasing productivity of agriculture to light manufacturing and then to full-scale industrialization may not be possible for all developing countries.
The World Bank president also feels that issues like child stunting and malnutrition have made India's workforce extremely vulnerable and leave it incapable of competing globally.
I strongly believe that we have to dramatically increase our aspirations both for the quantity and quality of investments in health, education, and skills. If we don't do it quickly, not only is it a recipe for poor economic growth, but we'll leave a large population of people living in countries where the traditional low-skilled jobs are not available and who, often through no fault of their own, simply can't compete.
Mechanization and technology have disrupted traditional industrial production in many countries. The World Bank president feels the way to achieve higher rates of inclusive and sustainable growth is not through isolationism and protectionism, but rather the solutions call for more cooperation, greater economic integration and stronger partnerships than ever before. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Meanwhile, in a surprise move, Syria's military announced on Wednesday that it was scaling back its bombardment of rebels in devastated Aleppo. The announcement comes nearly 2 weeks after declaring an all-out assault to capture the city. The military offensive ushered in a ferocious bombing campaign that a monitor says has killed 270 people, including 53 children. The announcement said that the decision follows the success of our armed forces in Aleppo cutting off and destroying all terrorist supply routes and vital terrorist bases. It was not clear if Russian airstrikes would also be reduced. Earlier, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov discussed Syria by phone on Wednesday. This despite a U.S. decision earlier this week to suspend direct talks with Moscow on trying to end the conflict. Meanwhile, a UN special expert has said that a deadly attack on an aid convoy in Syria last month was an airstrike. He said that the analysis of the satellite imagery clearly establishes that at least 18 people were killed when lorries unloading at a warehouse in a rebel-held town outside Aleppo came under fire. The U.S. believes Russian warplanes bombed the convoy. Russia, which backs Syria's government, denies the charge and says that the convoy caught fire. Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has established an internal board of inquiry to investigate the attack.
With our analysis, we determined it was an airstrike, and I think multiple other sources have said that as well. So a giant crater on the ground is almost certainly an airdrop munition.
Well, the UN's climate body has said that the landmark Paris climate deal will enter into force in 30 days after being ratified by 72 countries, accounting for more than 56% of global greenhouse gas emissions. The UNFCCC on its website announced the threshold for entry into force of the Paris Agreement has been achieved. Linked outside the French capital in December by 195 nations, the world's first universal climate treaty vows to cap global warming at well under 2 degrees Celsius. At least 55 countries, accounting for 55% of heat-trapping emissions, needed to ratify the pact before it could go into force. Meanwhile, US President Barack Obama called the ratification of the Paris Climate Accord a threshold nations officially reached on Wednesday, and a historic day in the fight against climate change.
Today is a historic day in the fight to protect our planet for future generations. 10 months ago in Paris, I said before the world that we needed a strong global agreement to reduce carbon pollution and to set the world on a low carbon course. The Paris Agreement alone will not solve the climate crisis. Even if we meet every target embodied in the agreement, we'll only get to part of where we need to go. But make no mistake, this agreement will help delay or avoid some of the worst consequences of climate change.
Well, Portugal's former Prime Minister Antonio Gutierrez is poised to become the next UN Secretary General. Now, Gutierrez, who was head of the UN's refugee agency for 10 years until 2015, emerged as the Security Council's runaway favourite after the latest in a series of straw polls on Wednesday. The 15-member Security Council cast secret ballots for each of the 10 candidates and none were found to oppose Gutierrez. They were asked to select from a choice of encourage, discourage or no opinion for each candidate, with the former Portuguese Prime Minister receiving 13 encourage votes and 2 no opinion votes. However, a formal vote will take place in the UN Security Council today to confirm the choice of nominee. Gutierrez will take over from Ban Ki-moon early next year. The post lasts for 5 years but is limited to a maximum of 2 terms.
Today, after our 6th straw poll, we have a clear favorite, and his name is Antonio Guterres. And we have decided to go for a formal vote tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock and wish Mr. Guterres well in discharging his duties as the Secretary General of the United Nations for the next 5 years.
Well, the 2016 Nobel Prize in Chemistry has been awarded to 3 scientists: Jean-Pierre Sauvage of France, J. Fraser Stoddart of Britain and Bernard Feringa of Holland. The award was announced by the Royal Academy of Sciences in Stockholm on Wednesday. The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences said that the laureates share the $930,000 prize for the design and synthesis of molecules with controllable movements which can perform a task when energy is added. The Chemistry Prize was the last of this year's science awards. The Nobel Peace Prize will be announced on Friday and the Economics and Literature Awards will be announced next week. The Nobel Prizes will be handed out at ceremonies in Stockholm and Oslo on December 10th this year. Well, let's now shift focus and bring you up to speed with some sports news and sports beat. Pakistan has been debarred from the Kabaddi World Cup 2016, which will kick off this week in India. According to reports, Pakistan has been denied entry because of a spike in tensions between the two nations after the Uri attack. International Kabaddi Federation Chief Gutierrez Chaturvedi said Pakistan is a valuable member of the federation, but looking at the current scenario and in the best interest of both the nations, the federation decided that Pakistan must be debarred from the championship. Unsparing on the underperforming shooters, the Abhinav Bindra-led NRAI review committee chastised the Rio Olympics flop show while recommending a systematic overhaul. The 4-member committee concluded that the consistent trickle of shooting medals since the 2004 Athens Games ended up making everyone involved in the sport complacent. The review report went on to dwell on individual performances, pointing out the laxities that ended up derailing a campaign that was built as India's best medal hope in Rio. Andy Murray stormed into the China Open quarterfinals with a 6-2, 6-1 victory over Andrei Kuznetsov. Murray will meet compatriot Kyle Edmund, who upset Spanish world number 18 Roberto Bautista 6-4, 4-6, 6-4 in the last 8 on Friday. Well, that's it on this edition of the Breakfast News. Have a good day.